All right, let's do chapter 11 here. Choral groups. Um, Chorus is a large body of singers. A choir is a smaller group of singers. We talked about the soprano, alto, tenor, bass, which is the most common, SATB. If you don't have accompaniment, like no piano or any other instrument, it's called a cappella, unaccompanied singers. There are other types of small groups called madrigal singers, chamber choirs, etc., some more specialized ensembles. Within instruments, you've got some classifications called ensembles, which are smaller. Chamber music is what they typically play 2 to 12 players and one player per part. So, for instance, a string quartet is considered chamber music, which a string quartet is made up of 4 strings, 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. You could have a trio, which would be 2 violins or 1 violin, 1 viola, and a cello. Piano trios, piano, violin, cello, etc. You can see lots of different types of ensembles. So those are much smaller than, for instance, an orchestra. Here's a picture of a string quartet. The orchestra, on contrast to these chamber musics, these are a large group of very diverse performing instruments. So they're all coming together to perform, but they're all different sounds. The gamelan orchestra is not really that common, not really going to talk about that. The symphony orchestra is where we're going to stay, the Western ensemble. It developed to the point where it became standard to have over 100 musicians, which is a very large. Still to this day, the strings of the orchestra are considered the heart of the orchestra. You'll notice when you go to a concert, the first person that warms the orchestra up is the first chair violinist. They're still kind of the top dog under the conductor. This is kind of the normal layout of a musical ensemble for orchestra. You're going to be more heavy in the strings. Particularly the violins are going to be in the largest in number. Woodwinds and brass, you can see how they're divided down, and percussion would be the smallest group. Lots of different bands we're going to look at: concert bands, marching bands, jazz bands, and they're all made up of different types of instrumental groups. You can learn more about those on your own. I know you've seen these marching bands, and you kind of know they're primarily bass and percussion. This guy is quite an interesting conductor, but usually the conductor stands in front. Sometimes they have crazy hair. They direct the musical ensemble. They're an important role because they help to interpret the music, they keep the group together, they indicate the tempo changes, the dynamics. And so you'll notice them conducting with that stick that shows where the strong beats are to help keep everybody together. That's called a baton, not a stick. And I just mentioned the concertmaster, that first chair violinist. So that's another very important role in an orchestra. I want you to take a listen to Benjamin Britten's Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra to really help you hear the different instrument timbres. It's going to give you a good idea of what they sound like in contrast to each other. Basic conducting patterns I'm not going to go over, but if you were learning how to conduct, those would show you how, when you go down, when you go up, when you make a triangle, etc. So with the Benjamin Britten, you'll find part 1 is the theme, triple meter, minor tonality. You're going to hear the full orchestra, then the families, and then back to the full orchestra. Part 2, short variations. Also, we've talked about what those variations are. And you're going to hear various instrument combinations. Part 3 is a fugue, which we haven't really talked about yet, but you'll hear instruments presenting in the same order as the variations, and then the full orchestra is going to end. You'll hear that theme over the fugue. When you're looking at an orchestra, this is kind of how they're arranged. Conductors in the center front. You've got your strings behind and in the front rows there. Violins and cellos, double basses. Behind them are going to be your woodwinds. And then in the back, because they're loud, are going to be the brass and the percussion. There's a little live view of what that might look like for an orchestra. Thank you.